All right, Joseph, thanks for having a chat to me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We just got some good training in and you fucking mushed my guard like it didn't exist. But that's not what we're going to talk about. Most of the people watching, rather than you explaining some detailed passing skill, I wanted to ask what most people, especially people who are newer to Jiu-Jitsu, or even guys that have been doing it for a bit, but they haven't worked out how to get good. They're just spinning their wheels. So you're kind of the poster boy for getting good quick. I mean, and I don't think it's fair to, I don't want that to like discredit what you've done either. But I mean, your skill progression is just super impressive. Obviously, you've been training since you were quite young. You're 20 years old now.
Yes.
But you're at like legitimate world-class level. And so my question to you is, can you give us and the people watching 3 tips that you think would be the most important for improving your skills at a fast rate? And I don't mean hypothetically, like what is it you did or you would do given the opportunity again, 3 skills that you would work on?
I think the 3 things that really helped me, and I can hold this, but beautiful. For the most part, it didn't happen all at once because I started training in a relatively small city at like a hobbyist gym. So it was kind of things that I had to stumble upon to kind of really try to get good at jiu-jitsu in my efforts to get good, because I was like, wow, I really want to take this seriously and really take it as far as I can. So, I mean, the first thing that was probably the most obvious to me is like taking advantage of what's already out there, whether it's like instructionals, free stuff on the internet, because right now there's so much information. It's just if you want to like watch it or not, because it's not like back in the day. I know a lot of the people who came before me who was training like the 2010s, even before that, it's like information was scarce to come by.
It was got existence.
Yeah, whereas right now it's like it's like similar to what like the internet has done over like the past 50 years, right? Now it's less about, okay, where can I find the information, but it's maybe sifting through and finding the right information, as well as also just spending the time to actually watch it. Because especially now that there's so many options, this can be difficult. So, I mean, probably the first thing is like being able to watch world-class instruction. And at the time I was watching the DDS. And this was kind of what I feel like built my foundation per se. Where it's like watching comps and watching instructionals. And there are even a lot of great free resources now. Like BJJ Fanatics has put out a lot of videos from both Gordon, Danaher, and everyone like from the DDS talking about techniques and how they use certain ideas for free on their YouTube. So I mean, depending on what you're able to like get your hands on, I think there's a lot of things that can be very helpful. So I'd say that's the first one.
So number 1, so just to confirm here, so number 1 is watch instructional / rolling competition footage of guys you want to
jiu-jitsu.
emulate. Yeah, watch jiu-jitsu. Okay. Now the big thing that everyone says is, I can't sit down and watch them, or I can't remember them. Like that's what I always get asked about when people talk about instructional. So can we split off from your part 1 into like A, B of that? What about someone who doesn't have this autistic ability that some of us have to be able to like compartmentalize and remember like hours worth of things? How would you help that guy when he says, how do I remember it all?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite a tough thing, even for myself. I don't feel like I have the best ability to remember and recall things. However, I'll use tools like, probably my favorite thing is like screen recording and taking notes.
Yeah.
And usually screen recording is the best thing for me. So if there's like a specific detail, or like often in these instructionals, you'll find people, they'll summarize the technique and be like, okay, in this situation, we're focused on this, this, and this, and this is what we're gonna do. And I'll just screen record that so that when I'm going to train, I'll usually probably come around maybe a bit earlier or stay a bit later just so I can drill some of these things. I'll review my notes and just go over the screen recordings for like a minute long.
Okay.
And I don't even have to listen to everything. I can just find the part you can scroll through just so that you refresh your brain. Because once you see it again, you kind of it comes back to your mind. So I feel like that helps a lot, as opposed to just trying to recall, what was I doing? And I feel like that can often be very tough.
There's a lot of, not filler in instructionals, but there's a lot of extrapolating. So you're saying, condense it down to the key things and screen record those. That will make notes on those. That
yeah, I think the screen recording just helps you like jog your memory again, because then you remember the other things that were more relevant. Just because remembering it from nothing can be quite difficult, especially if you're not prompted. Like let's say I'm working on a situation that's super alien to me. It's going to be very difficult for me to practice it in training when it's nothing close to what I already do. So I have to then refresh myself with like maybe a screen recording or my notes, and then I can maybe try force myself into situations, whether it be through a positional round or just tinkering through drilling.
Perfect.
Right?
Okay. Step 2 or part 2 or tip 2. What is it?
Yeah, so I'd probably say finding a good training environment, and whether that be finding or creating a good training environment, I think that this is very important, because one part is the research aspect of it, but then the next part is actually the practical day-to-day of, okay, I'm not just researching, but I'm actually doing things that in regards to the research. So whether I like trying to practice the techniques that I've researched or the ideas, etc. So trying to find like an environment that is very conducive to this type of growth. If like for me, what I really don't enjoy is just rolling, and like I'll do some technique that maybe it doesn't necessarily apply to me, and then just roll, and then there's no discussion period, there's no time to drill and tinker. I like this word tinker a lot because I feel like it very well describes how I like to approach this type of drilling, because when you say drilling, a lot of people like think of different things, whether it's drilling for reps, all this type of stuff. I really like this idea of tinkering because it's like kind of playing around, changing things around. Like it's basically like you kind of get an idea, test it, okay, what adjustments need to be made, etc. And I feel like whether you find a place that's very much like this, or then especially if you're like maybe one of the better guys in the gym or the coach, you can do that yourself and slowly kind of encourage people to take on these habits of maybe after the round having a discussion period, or when you drill, don't just drill for reps, but try to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, all these type of things.
Yep. Especially, what do you think about this idea? So talking about the drilling thing there, something I talk about is probably earlier in your jiu-jitsu career, white belt, very new, everything's alien. Even an elbow escape's alien. So maybe for those guys, they're a little bit more rote learning, where it's like copy along and learn the movements. And then as you progress further through and your understanding comes along, maybe then you give yourself more open parameters. That's how I kind of explain it. So with my more advanced guys, if I show an elbow escape, I expect to see the white belts down here pretty much just copy him, and I expect to see the more advanced guys going, okay, if I elbow escape, what do you feel you want to do there? Oh, you do that. Well, then what do we? And they're kind of asking that question of themselves. Is that what you mean by tinkering?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it's just, I mean, I definitely think at the start, I remember as a white belt, I couldn't even watch instructionals for like the first year or so, just because there's so many things that I was focusing on, I wasn't focusing on the right things, just because everything's so new.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at some point, once you get to a certain degree of proficiency, I think it's very much like that. But I also just I think seeing the environment where people are tinkering is kind of the right thing to do.
Yep.
Because if you see because usually just the nature of things is that the newer people are going to copy the people whom are already there, and the more like the senior students. And so having the senior students set an example of how one should train and how one should think through problems, I think is very important. And so either finding an environment like that or building one like that, I think is very important.
Okay, beautiful. So one was watch good jiu-jitsu, whether it's an instructional, whether it's matches. Number 2 was find a space conducive to you learning. Number 3, what do we got?
I'd say number 3 is a bit of maybe a follow-up of the first 2, but it's kind of like you have to self-reflect. And I think whether that be like watching your rounds and not just, I mean, tinkering and having a good training environment does kind of involve this, but even outside of that, not limiting yourself to certain techniques. So like, for example, if you're just a guard player, if you just play leg locks, reflect on that and see, okay, is this the appropriate thing for me to do? And when it's no longer the case, don't be afraid to necessarily change that. Because I mean, for me, I think for the most part, if you don't have a wrestling background and you're not like very athletic or huge, most people start out as guard players. Mm-hmm. But then I've seen so many people fall into this trap of, okay, I've gotten good at one thing, and then they just stay with that the whole way, and they just remain a specialist for their whole career. And I think to some degree you need self-reflection, introspection to be able to determine that, okay, I really need to switch it up now, and choosing where to focus your attention. And that can come by like just, okay, reflecting on the round. Sometimes it's not that easy, so sometimes you can watch rounds, and sometimes you have to look at other people. But I think with being willing to change what you're doing and not stay fixed to one thing is very important. So this kind of idea of self-reflection / introspection, I think, is very important throughout your whole career, like the things I said before.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, thanks, mate. So I appreciate it. So hopefully that helps people that are watching along. I know you've got online products that you've got that people can go and learn more about the way you like to do jiu-jitsu, which is phenomenal. Where can they find all that stuff?
Yeah, so I have some instructionals in BJJ Fanatics. I have a Patreon. Might be moving that, but for now you can find most of what I put out on my Instagram, Jozef Chen JJ, JOZEF CHEN JJ.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. No worries.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, wonderful.